and welcome to 21st Century Vitalism. This is a podcast exploring how we can best maintain a sense of energy, inspiration, and wakefulness while living with the uncertainties of the modern age. My name is Brett Kane, and I'll be your host on this journey as we have a multidisciplinary conversation with a wide variety of professionals who I feel hold a piece to this ever-changing puzzle. For today's episode, we have entrepreneur, meditation teacher, and president of Jigme Lingpa Center, Mordy Levine. Mordy, along with his co-author and teacher Lama Lhanang Rinpoche, have just released their new book, The Beginner's Guide to Karma, which will be the focus of this conversation. Our goal with this episode is to demystify this often misunderstood concept and recontextualize it in a practical way that you can utilize to understand your mind and motivations. The increasingly uncertain times that we're entering, it is of absolute importance that we learn how to navigate the energies of our mind in a way that allows us to maintain contact with our values and highest intentions. And as somebody who spent quite a bit of time with these teachings from different sources, I have to say that this guidebook is a beautiful introduction to the science of how our thoughts, actions, and speech create either the positive or negative conditions of our lives. It's very useful for those who have a meditative practice, but it's also really good for people who don't. Fundamentally, it's a call to take responsibility for our state of mind and the way that we respond to the happenings of the world. So if this is something that really resonates with you, I recommend picking up a copy of the book, as well as tuning in with Mordy and his teacher, Lama Lhanang Rinpoche, over at BuddhistSanDiego.com. They have quite a bit of online offerings that would be excellent spaces for you to connect deeper with meditative practice and maybe expand your understanding of some of these oftentimes very public but misunderstood concepts and ideas. If you want to support this show, you can head on over to patreon.com/21st Century Vitalism and become a member. It really helps me keep the lights on, but I get it if finances are just not where you have excess resource. In that case, you can subscribe over on YouTube, like us on Facebook, or follow us on Instagram. I'm probably the most active there, but the subscription to YouTube is probably the most beneficial out of those. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode. If you want to sit back, drink some tea, maybe do some stretches, most importantly, whatever you do, just open your heart for Mordy Levine. So Mordy, hello, welcome to the show. I just want to start by saying thank you so much for joining me. How are we doing today?
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. So I recently went through your new book, you and Lama Lhanang Rinpoche's new text on karma. And I found this to be really succinct, very clear. And it's a subject that can be misconstrued pretty often, especially here in the West. So I think I really enjoyed the work, and it
Great.
elucidated
Great.
some things for me. So I really want to start by asking, why karma? Out of all of the teachings in the Buddhist lexicon, why did you and Rinpoche feel like this was an important piece right now?
I guess there's two reasons. One is, especially in the West, as you mentioned, it's very easy for us to use the word karma flippantly and not really understand what it means. And we give some examples in the book. Oh, so-and-so lost money, got sick, got hurt, lost their, whatever it is, whatever that, won $1 billion, whatever, oh, that's their karma. And to some degree, that's true. But there's a lot more going on than just that simple, the feeling people have is, oh, they deserve that, whether for good or for bad. And we don't use the word deserved. That's not how we use it. So we understand there's a lot of misunderstanding, misinterpretation of the word karma. So we wanted to clear that up. But more importantly, given the craziness of the world right now, I probably could have said that any year in the last 10, 20, 50, 200 years, but it just seems getting crazier and crazier. It's our feeling that if people understood really what karma is, we'd behave better. We would improve the world. So Not that I expect any world leaders to read the book anytime soon, but it takes one person and then a group of people, and you build up from there. Whereas Lama Lhanang Rinpoche says, if you want world peace, you start with inner peace. So that was kind of our goal, is to start these waves of hopefully good information to reach people, and hopefully we can all improve as a result.
Yeah, I love that. So, just to clear away some of the kind of misconceptions that a lot of people have, karma comes from the Buddhist system. Well, actually, before that with the Hindus, and I'm sure some people before that even. But as it's being represented by your teacher, in this system, I guess, what exactly is karma, and like, how would you describe it to somebody who might have a more kind of surface level understanding, and maybe what are some of the things that they're missing with that understanding?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the fact that the karma's been around preceding the Buddha, as you
Hmm.
mentioned, hundreds, if not thousands of years, a concept, and the Buddha refined it significantly. So the word karma means action. Can be used in different ways. It can be used as a noun. Certainly, it can be used to represent different types of actions. It can be used as speech, thought, and physical actions. So, and then it can also refer to a consequence. Oh, that's their karma. And and what the Buddha brought to the table about that was, he said, karma really refers to motivation. We have to look at,
Hmm.
if you want to know what your karma is, you look at your motivation. If you want to know what your karma is going to be for a specific action, thought, or speech, then you have to, what's your motivation? And the example I give, I think I give it in the book. If not, it's still a good example, is, at the end of the year, I like to donate money. I'm going to write a check for $100. My neighbor, he's writing a check for 75. I'm going to write for 100. Just. So what is my motivation there? Well, obviously it's pretty self-centered. Or my motivation could be, I'm going to write a check for $100 because I understand that the children in the school, they really need, school supplies. Okay, what's my motivation there? It's quite selfless.
Hmm.
So we look at motivation to determine your karma. In many, many cases throughout the day, your motivation is conflicted. I want to help them, but I also want to help myself. So, so that's kind of what the Buddha brought to the table, among many things that I'm sure we'll talk about, which is, what is your motivation? If you want to know what your karma is going to be, just look at your motivation.
Mm, yeah. So does that kind of make the actions that we take kind of like empty of any sort of inherent, I guess, substance on the in the karmic kind of perspective? Or are there actions that you do, even if you had like a good intention, the action itself is either bad, or if you had a bad intention, but the effect is good, like, is there anything within the action itself that kind of has that?
So my motivation is to, don't, let's use that same example, donate $100. Um, I donate the $100 and then they use it for something, they don't use it well.
Hmm.
Well, or on my way to donate the $100, I trip and I lose my balance. I hurt myself. I go home and I forget to donate the 100. I still have that motivation, but there's still some good karma associated with that. But there's
Mm-hmm.
different levels of, we'll call it, weight to karma. One is the thought, oh, I hope everything goes well. Okay, there's some good karma there. Oh, I not only hope everything goes well, but I'm actually going to speak to it and say, I hope everything. So it gets a little bit heavier. Oh, I'm going to actually go over there and really do my best to make sure everything goes well. So there's the more I do, the heavier the karma, and also the more complete it's going to be. So saying, I'm going to go get that guy and shoot him while I'm sitting on my couch. I saw that commercial. I'm going to go get that guy and shoot him. Well, it's not great karma, but there's a big, big distance between saying that, between thinking that, saying that, and actually doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Um, it kind of makes me think about one of these things. It gets denigrated very often in our society, of this idea of like hopes and prayers. Like, well, what are your hopes and prayers good for? Like we always say that after a tragedy, but then people don't ever do anything to engage with it. So with that, is there a way that we could even have something like hopes and prayers kind of like be a way to kind of maybe step away from responsibility and I guess like what's your take on the notion of this like hopes and prayers as a response to something that like needs changing?
So, yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. It comes down to, in my mind, um, how strongly devoted and motivated your hopes and prayers are.
Hmm.
So if I could just say the words, "Oh, our hopes and prayers are with you," that's one thing. There's probably some benefit to that. But if I truly, truly go deep inside into my heart and feel it and emit that feeling, then it's much, much more beneficial, certainly to me and possibly to the person who I'm trying to help. So it depends on how intent and devoted you are to that energy, that feeling in your mind, your heart.
Yeah, it makes sense. One of the things I think a lot of people, when they think about karma, somebody does something bad to them, like, oh, well, you just got some bad karma. Like, that's a phrase that I feel gets thrown around a lot, bad or good
Mhm.
karma. And I know like Buddhism's view on morality is really nuanced, but like, where does that kind of come from in this tradition? The notions of good and bad, and how does karma kind of get measured in that way?
Your questions sound very simple, but they're not. So I appreciate
Yeah.
that. Good and bad, those are funny words
Hmm.
because, I was on my way to an appointment this morning and I got stuck in traffic and I got there late. And oh, that's bad. Um, but you know what? If I left a little bit earlier, I would have thought I might have gotten there on time, but might have gotten into a car accident and died. So good or bad, don't know. Or you probably know the Zen story, the Zen master farmer. I'll tell it quickly, where, Zen master farmer goes to bring in the crops, calls his son, "Hey, go get the horses from the stable. Bring in the crops, bring in the harvest." And son goes to the stable and, oh my God, all the horses have left. They're gone. They bolted. And all the townspeople coming, "Oh, Zen master farmer, what bad luck you have. You have no horses, can't bring in the harvest. Bad luck." He says, "Well, good luck, bad luck, maybe." And
Hmm.
then son goes out to the valley, brings all the horses back and brings even more back because he found other horses that weren't theirs. They were wild. And oh my God, the townspeople go, "Oh, what good luck you have, Zen Master Farmer. You have more horses, you're going to have a great harvest." And then in putting on the horseshoes and tending to the horses, the son gets kicked in the chest, has to go to the hospital. "Oh, what bad luck you have." And his response always is, "Oh, good luck, bad luck, maybe." And then finally, his town or state goes to war, but they can't take the son. He's in the hospital. What good luck? So you don't know. That's why I say good luck, bad luck. Don't know. We don't know. And a lot of that has to do with what you do with it in your mind. So,
Mm.
you could be lying there in the hospital thinking you have bad luck, or you could be lying in the hospital thinking you have good luck. Well, which is it?
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. The working kind of basis that I have for kind of like this notion of like good and bad, and I want to run this by you and kind of hear your take on it. I've always kind of considered it more as levels of fixation in terms of like if you do something that we would consider bad by our society, what that means is that it creates a sense of like density within your awareness and within your mind that kind of closes you from the field of phenomena and from yourself and keeps you just a little bit more self-fixated on just kind of the conceptual mind. And then the things that are good, like when you do an action that is good, it actually opens you up like somatically and very immediately to the world around you and connects you with other beings. And I think like the process of creating good karma is really just kind of like emptying out of that density and that obscuration so that you can be more just in touch with reality and with life. And really, I mean, I think in our country, in our society, we have this kind of like moralistic kind of like finger wagging, like don't do what's evil, don't do what's bad, because something bad will happen to you. But I think more fundamentally, more basically, we have avoided these things because it creates a lot of stress and suffering on our immediate kind of perception of reality. I don't know if that at all is relevant, but
Yeah, so you used the word good and bad again, and I think what I would like to use is the words selfless and selfish.
Mm-hmm.
So if I do something that's really just to benefit me, maybe even at the expense of others, I would call that selfish. If I do that because I want to help someone else, then that's selfless. And of course, there can be a mix of motivations, as I said earlier. And that's really what will determine good karma or bad karma. So that's why I'm a little hesitant to use the words good and bad.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So would you say, linking that with this notion of like joy, because I guess the thing that I just described, doing actions that are more selfless, that connect you to other people and the world around you, I think that, from my experience, is where joy kind of comes in, is actually when you're less focused on yourself and you're more just connecting to just the field around you and within you. Um, and I think that that's really what a lot of people are like looking for when they act selfishly, is that they like want to be happy, but they've kind of like had a mistaken view and they think that they need to empower themselves rather than empower those around them.
Yeah, the funny thing, not funny, haha, is that we all seem to chase things for joy or happiness that are really self-centered in nature.
Yeah.
Not really understand, and we do that a lot over and over. We create a habit out of that,
Mhm.
which is another word for karma, is habit. Whereas by doing just the opposite, that's where the joy comes. If I say,
Mhm.
hey, uh, I'm going to write you a check for, thank you so much for having me on the podcast, Brett. I'm going to write you a check for $50,000. Wow. You'd go, this is great. And you'd feel a certain degree of positive, I'm not going to say joy, but you'd feel happy.
Mhm.
2, 3, 4, 5 days later, maybe 2, 3, 4 weeks later, that feeling is going to be gone. You'll be
Yeah.
back to your baseline. But if you said that, but the feeling that I would get by giving, that stays with you and that becomes a part of you. And that could be very, very joyful, especially if I'm not just writing a check, but actually doing something that truly helps others.
Yeah. So, as we start to kind of explore this notion of karma, I guess what is the prescription? What do we do with this information and this kind of understanding? Like, what is the path kind of quality of karma?
Right. So easier said than done, but we kind of look at our motivations. We or just be aware of our motivations. Be aware of our habits, habits of mind. Where is our mind taking us thousands of times a day? What are those thoughts? What are those stories we're telling ourselves? What are those opinions, the views that we have of ourselves and others? The stronger those opinions are, the more fixed we are, the more we think things are factual when they're really just temporary, moving, always changing situations. Once again, the more solidified I am, that also is another way to say that generates negative karma. The more open minded I am, oh, yeah, maybe so and so is going to be a great president. Maybe he won't. Maybe he sounds like a horrible person, but when he gets there, he might do some good things. Who knows? We don't know. Be open
Yeah.
minded. So
Yeah.
that's just a kind of another way to look at it. But to answer your question directly, is we have to be aware of our thoughts. We have to be aware of our motivations. And that the only way that I know how to do that well is through some form of meditation. There's thousands of types of meditation out there. I'm sure, if it comes from a solid source, a Buddhist teacher or a rock solid Buddhist lineage, then, you can't go wrong. That's the starting point for being aware of where is your mind, what's your motivation, what are the stories you're telling yourself, how open-minded are you? And as you meditate more and more and more, you tend to, that fades, that fixation fades, the selfishness fades, the stories that we tell ourselves fade.
Yeah. So, kind of exploring the mechanisms of meditation a little bit. This is something that's very close to me. I'm a meditation instructor as well. And I mean, I have found just tremendous benefit with it. But I think a lot of people, again, it's another one of those things that has so many styles and meanings to so many different people. I guess, could we just talk a little bit about your practice and kind of what you've been initiated in, and what does that look like, and how has that kind of helped you see your karma?
Right. So I'll just talk about my practice today. I'm not going to go through my evolution of practice. Be a
Yeah.
much longer and more boring podcast.
Yeah.
So, so I do two types of meditation. One is shamatha, which is just kind of, calming the mind, things like that, observing my breath. And the other type is to go through a sadhana, or a set of practices in from the Nyingma Tibetan lineage, which helped me become less self-centered from a 50,000-foot level. And that involves aspirations for others to benefit, um, aspirations to merge one's mind with certain deities, things like that. Which I don't want to call it a higher level. I don't even want to call it, it's an advanced level. I'm not saying I'm advanced, but it's definitely
Mhm.
an advanced level of practice. And I
Yeah.
do those two together. And then throughout the day, I will, if I'm good, see, you made me use the word good.
Yeah.
I will use some of those same tools and practices to keep my mind less selfish and more beneficial to others, and less fixated and less opinionated and more open-minded.
Yeah. Wow. So I guess, what is that in like a day-to-day basis? And we don't have to get too personal if you don't want to, but how is that how does that show up in a more practical, for people who are just like, I'm kind of interested in meditation, but like, what is it like? Like, what is the meditator's experience in a day-to-day? Say you're just driving to work, going to the grocery store. Is this something that's ever present, or does it kind of just come up in bursts? Or, how would you kind of describe 10 years into a meditative path?
I would say the answer is both. So we need to agree on a couple of things. That, however old you are, or, I just turned 66 a few months ago. So I have 66 years of habits, storytelling. Even though I've been meditating for the last, 40 years or so, um, I've got habits of, oh, she's so bossy, and oh, I can't believe he said that to me, and oh, I hate vanilla. I can't believe they're out of chocolate. Whatever it is, we've got welcome to the West. And we have thousands and thousands of those types of thoughts throughout the day as well as through the night. And now I start to meditate. And I say, oh, I'm going to meditate 20 minutes, 30 minutes today. I've heard the amount of times I've heard, I'm sure you have as well as a meditation teacher, people say, I can't meditate. I tried it, I can't. Or I tried it and it didn't work. So meditating once is great, but that's not going to erase 40, 50, 60 years of bad mental hygiene, we'll call it.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you do it a second day and you do it a third day. So it's kind of like taking a vitamin. If you believe in vitamins, you take one, who cares? Over time, or you're going to go work out at the gym. I'm going to work out at the gym this month. I went once, I'm good. Well, good luck with that. Doesn't do anything. Oh, you go every day, twice a day. So it accumulates. And so that cumulative nature is kind of like a drop in the bucket, a little tiny drop of water in the bucket. You look in the bucket, you barely see anything. But every single day, a little drop of water in the bucket. And before you know it, over weeks, months, and years, there's a lot of water in there. You build up a
Mm,
lot of credit. So now you go about your daily activities, and a few things happen naturally. One is that voice that's in your mind, that talking voice telling all those stories, that tends to be less loud and less often. The other thing that happens is you start to notice and observe your motivation and what's really going on in your mind. And then you act accordingly.
yeah.
And then there are tools you can use during the day as well that kind of brings those things to the front as well. The expectation you're going to just sit for 5, 10, 20 minutes and magically you're going to start levitating and hit nirvana, that's ridiculous. But that's what some people have, that expectation.
Yeah. 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 What I found with my experience, I'm a daily practitioner of probably just 5 years. So I'm still pretty early on, and I can acknowledge that. But the first year or two, I found it fascinating how much my mind was actually kind of deceiving me in terms of hiding my motivations and hiding
Right.
the things that um, really push me through the world. I'd be doing something that I would say is like, oh, this is like got to be good. This is good for them. And when if I'd sit and I actually like watch, I'm like, oh, I really got something off of that. Like I got really kind of high off of that action. And that was something that I think it's kind of just like hard to face yourself in that way. There's a little bit of coarseness that you have to kind of learn how
Mm.
to be comfortable with facing, especially at first when you're just really seeing the rawness of all the energy that's been motivating you, which I think in our society it probably tilts towards selfishness. And I think balancing that out with compassion and loving kindness has been really important. And those two things to me have just been so important to couple together.
Yeah, I think the analogy is lots of analogies. There's some rust on the door, and you start scraping away at it, and you scraping away at it, and you keep scraping. And it's like, oh my God, I didn't realize how much rust there is. Just didn't come off right away. And the
Hmm.
same thing with our mind is initially we might be shocked that, oh, we can't have more than 5, 3, 10 seconds without another thought jumping in there, the monkey mind.
Hmm.
And then eventually you get a little more sensitive and you realize that some of those things that we're thinking about is like, as you would say, obscurations. And it's, dirty. I don't want to use that implies something else, but still, there's a lot else going. It's not clean. It's all very selfish and it's all very habitual. It's the same thoughts we've been having for the last few days, weeks, months, or years. And the more you can do that, the more you meditate, naturally, that starts to fade.
Yeah. That's kind of what I've noticed too. Probably on the third or the fourth year, there was kind of a absence of trying that started to naturally emerge, where I
Hmm.
didn't have to. It was nothing that I ended up forcing. It's just something that I noticed kind of after the fact. I'd kind of look and like, oh, I'm just like a little less neurotic and a little less caught in my story and this kind of notion that I'm like building up, and I'm just more present and more kind of playful. And I think that that was something that really emerged that I've really found to be useful for connecting with other people is just kind of like a natural playfulness and just more presence, just more being with people. It's a
That's
big thing.
beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. That doesn't change. I mean, even I've been doing it for quite a while, and you still have these, I don't want to call them revelations, but just moments when things seem a little bit lighter.
Yeah.
And it's a never ending process. It's not like, okay, you've been doing it 10, 20, 30 years. You're good. I'm done. I reached
Yeah.
it. You know, it just keeps,
Graduated.
yeah, it's a work in process for the rest of your life, or however, if you believe in rebirth, for the many lifetimes to come.
Yeah. So for the people who are practicing, who are tuning into this notion of their intentions having value and like an intrinsic weight to them, and then they see that like their intentions are have been very selfish, and some people it's a spectrum, right? How many people manifest that quality. For the people who are really on one end of that spectrum of really hyper fixated on satiating their own wants and they become aware, how would you say, how do we cultivate a better intention without having that also become another like want? Like, well, that sounds way better over there, so I'm going to have an intention to be better so that I can have more comfort.
Yeah, I think the first step is just awareness. You're not aware, you have no chance, zero
Hmm.
chance. So now the first step is awareness, and then you start being aware of, wow, we'll call it awareness, and also motivation to improve. I might be aware that I'm an a-hole, but I don't feel like improving. I'm just going to stay
Hmm.
this way. I'm comfortable where I am. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I think the first step is awareness, and then somewhere in between, that step and the next step is, hey, do I want to change? Typically,
Yeah.
people want to change when there's some degree of suffering. If everything's hunky dory, and why do I want to do anything different? Or
Yeah.
as Lama Lhanang Rinpoche says, my co-author, he says, when the weather is good, when the food is good and the weather is sunny, you know, It's when it's not, that's when, you know if you're a Buddhist practitioner.
Oh, I love that.
It's
Yeah.
easy to, or let me rephrase it. It's easy to be a good Buddhist practitioner when the weather is good and the food, when the weather is sunny and the food
Yeah.
is good.
Yeah. 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 So this wasn't really in your book, but for me, it feels like it's exactly the teaching on karma. It was one of the first things that I learned in my studies, and that was um, the Bhava Chakra, the
Hmm.
Wheel of Life.
Hmm.
Is there anything that you could maybe say about this very illustrious image that is often outside of most monasteries, from my understanding? Is there a connection between that outside of just the nidanas there?
Right. So I think that really refers to the, consequences. This, there's a cause and there's an effect. Cause and effect. That's one of the things, certainly that's part of the law of karma. Another way of saying it is the law of cause and effect. And that's those, I think you're talking about the 12 steps around the wheel of
Hmm.
life.
Yeah.
And that kind of brings it out is, why are we reborn? Well, we're reborn because there's grasping. Why is there grasping? Whereas grasping, it kind of works your way back. There's grasping because there's ignorance. Why is there ignorance? Because et cetera, et cetera. So that is definitely another way to present karma, the law of cause and effect.
Yeah. Do you think for people who are learning at this level that we're currently talking about, is that maybe a little bit more advanced? Because it took me a while, and I still probably don't fully understand the 12
Yeah.
links. But when I have covered it with my teacher and we went through every one of them, there was moments of insight that were like, oh, like that's where if you are to make a change in this habit energy, there's like this gap energy. I forgot what it's between. Would you recommend people take a look at that, show any interest in the Wheel of Life or
Yeah. I think it's so, look, I think people should go what they're attracted to, what they're drawn to, certainly. If I had to think back why we didn't touch upon that in the book, I don't like to use the word advanced, but I would say that it is a sophisticated view, and and there's value to it. But I like to teach and make things as clear and as basic as possible, and for beginners really.
Mhm.
So not that advanced practitioners like yourself and others can't get benefit from the book. They certainly can. But I wanted someone to be able to open the book and read it for Buddhists, non-Buddhists, and read it and understand crystal clear all the different aspects to karma and how it applies to their lives. And the Wheel of Life is it's a beautiful depiction. But I think unless you have a number of years of experience of Buddhism under your belt, it's going to be a little tough to digest.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it was really interesting. And I felt like I was kind of pushed into the deep end when my teacher brought it up because it was the first thing that he's
Yeah.
like, all right, check this out. And it was just like, huh. But the way it was described was so psychological. I'm in the lineage of Chogyam Trungpa, and that was also one of the things that he really emphasized when he first came over to the West. So I just didn't know if that was something that was present. Um, yeah, one of the things that I thought was really interesting and I think is relevant for even where your book is at, in terms of purification, cultivation of really good karma, or sorry, really selfless karma. Um, this is referencing the six realms of the wheel, in that there is like the God realm, which is kind of like the ultimate. You've purified a lot to where you're almost untouched, unfazed by kind of selfish karma. But in that teaching, that's kind of pointed to as a dead end in a way, from my understanding, in that you end up getting disconnected from the suffering of the world. So, at least the way that it was shared with me was that being in the human realm where you have this balance of both um, pleasure and pain was actually kind of like the sweet spot for enlightenment. So, is there a point where you can accumulate too much selfless karma?
So the being in the human realm, the advantages to being in the human realm, the primary advantages are that it allows you to become enlightened. Talk about what that means in a moment. You don't really have that opportunity So you have the skills, you have the quality, you have the characteristics. You can think, you can do, you can physically, the cow, not a good example because of they're venerated in India, but my dogs, they're in the animal realm. They're not going to be enlightened anytime soon. I'm sure there are examples of dogs that became enlightened, so don't hold me against it, but it's very, very rare.
Yeah.
And then when you look into, other realms like the God realm, they are not suffering in the way that humans are suffering, so they're not going to be studying Buddhism. They've got everything they need. They have other issues. They're highly competitive, things like that. You can see, Donald Trump, for example. He lives in the God realm. We all kind of fluctuate in and out of different realms throughout the day. But there's an example where he's got everything he needs financially, but yet he's clearly not a happy person, and he's clearly not interested in walking down the path towards betterment or improvement of his life, whether it's Buddhist, becoming enlightened, or any other religion. It doesn't really matter. So the human realm has those advantages. And that's why we aspire to be reborn in the human realm, not only in the human realm, but in a precious human rebirth. Precious human rebirth means that you can have if I was reborn in some places in the east, in the third world, where people, or today there's so many wars going on, God forbid, if I was born in some of those areas, that's not a precious human rebirth. You don't have the opportunity to advance yourself spiritually. So here in the West, in most places, in most countries, you have that opportunity in the human realm. And we call it, not just are you reborn in the human realm, but you have a precious human rebirth because you have opportunities. You're in a neighborhood, you're in a family, you're in a country where those opportunities are available to you. You're reborn, God forbid, in Russia or some of these other countries, North Korea. You don't have that opportunity. That is not a precious human rebirth.
Yeah. So, this is something you touch up on in the book, and I think it's a great pivot. But this notion of collective karma seems to kind of play into whether or not you have this precious human birth. Sometimes people are born in situations, like you're saying, in like North Korea, where the environment around you is so specifically tailored to keeping you kind of isolated and take away your rights. What is the intersection between personal accountability and karma and the collective? How does that kind of get sliced up?
So karma is a personal thing. However, so when all of us get together and we decide we're going to go storm the Capitol on January 6th, is that a collective action? It is, but we all have the individual abilities to say, no, I'm not going to do that. Or yes, I will do that. And then I might be influenced by the guy next to me who says, oh yeah, let's go do that. And then I go, yeah, okay, let's go do that. So there's definitely, interactions within the mind and energy that's collective. But at the end of the day, it is a personal karma. We can decide for ourselves to do something or not do something.
So, even in the face of just terrible circumstances, whether it's state issued violence or racism, are you kind of saying that we all have an opportunity to respond from a place of our own volition? And um, I mean, because there's some people who are just like born in situations that it's like they've had no access to any sort of goodness, and there's almost like this automatic momentum that kind of gets set up for them, but they are still fundamentally responsible in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, once again, responsible is a heavy word,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, you're absolutely right. We all have the ability to think a certain way. That's up to us. There is no, and then based upon that, we can speak. That's my decision to call you a name or to not call you a name or to just be silent or to go and, save someone's life or not, or to go bring all the Jews to the concentration camp or say, I'm not going to do that. I might
Yeah.
get shot, but I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
So that's up to us. And yes, in people born in unfortunate circumstances, the odds are heavily weighted against them. That's not a precious human rebirth.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of people, stories out there of people who made the selfless decision, even though to their own detriment, and or took on risks, risk their own lives to make selfless decisions.
Yeah. It reminds me of Viktor Frankl and like Man's Search for Meaning and being, I mean, for the people who aren't familiar, there it is. You certainly are familiar. This gentleman found himself in a concentration camp and then used that as an opportunity to express as much goodness as he could muster in that very limited, to me, that seems like that's some bodhisattva activity, but that flexing of the action that you have available to you, even when you have very little, it really does speak to the amount of flexibility we have in any given situation.
Yeah, so I definitely don't want to preach about things that are so extreme because I don't know. I haven't lived there, so I know how difficult it is. I can't say, "Oh, yeah, we should all be that way,"
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But but what I will say is the only thing that we can control in our lives is our state of mind, and the only thing that will make us happy or free is our state of mind. So, with those two thoughts, it gives us that opportunity as well as that responsibility. So we can't always go, oh, well, did you see how he said that to me? Well, I can't believe he called me that name. Or, oh, he took advantage of me. She was so unfair. It's like, yeah, that's may all be true. But at the end of the day, it's up to you how you react up here. And because that's the only thing you can control. And or we have to train ourselves so eventually we can have some degree of control over it as well. It's not like we can all control ourselves. We'd all be walking around as a free bird, just like the Buddha.
Yeah.
But we're not there. But we try to get there through
Yeah.
the meditation and other types of trainings.
Yeah. It's amazing how radical that idea truly is. I feel like most people live from a place of they're just reacting. And I mean, largely me to an extent too, in a lot of situations. And you become aware of that. But just the notion that you can actually kind of use your mind as like a tool and actually kind of take a little bit of control and ownership over it rather than just kind of bouncing like a pinball from like event to event from another person's emotional reaction. And it's so rare to actually find, I feel.
I think it's difficult, and I think people are not aware of it. And those of us that are aware of it, and those of us that do practice meditation, have a clue. And then you meet great beings like my co-author Lama Lhanang Rinpoche and other great lamas who experience very unfortunate circumstances, but they're like, sure, okay, yeah, no problem. It doesn't change their freedom of mind, their ability to feel joy, their ability to help others, which is what they aspire to do. So when
Yeah.
you look at those examples, those models, then you know what's possible.
Yeah. That's something that I find fascinating is by the people who take on this kind of work and really kind of like own up to the energies of their mind, it almost immediately gets turned into some form of service. I think like naturally within that kind of mastery comes this desire. Like it's like it immediately arises with the mastery of you just begin to look out and like, oh, like there's something I can offer here. And it just seems really just seamless in the way that that arises.
Yes. So two sides of the same coin are this understanding that the world is impermanent, and the other side of that same coin is this compassion for other sentient beings. And they're related to each other. I don't have to not going to get into how they're related, but they're related to each other. And as we meditate more and more, the mind becomes clearer. And as you said, or implied, there's a natural desire to help others. And in fact, That's the only desire that is good karma. Desire for food or attachment, another way to say desire for sex or money or power, that is very self-centered, and that generates negative karma. But, I desire to help others, help other beings. That's not only acceptable, but that generates good karma.
Yeah. And as we said before, it's that thing that actually brings you the thing that you ultimately want, which is joy. So it's just interesting how it's a complete circuit. It's self-containing. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, I feel like we're kind of hitting that point. I feel like we've covered quite a bit of just dense material, kind of rapid fire. So I do want to give you a chance to just kind of plug how people can stay in contact with you and where they can get your book, and if there's any other teaching opportunities that you have available.
Sure. Yeah. So book's available in books. Actually, it's October 29th. So in 2 weeks, it'll be available in bookstores throughout the United States, certainly, and as well as at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, or if you go into your local bookstore, they'll either have it on the shelves or you can order it from them if you want to support them, either way. And then, of course, Amazon sells it. They're actually selling it now, the written version and the audible version. And then, the website where if you wanted to learn from my co-author, Lama Lhanang Rinpoche, you can go to BuddhistSanDiego.com, and then you'll see our calendar of events there, that type of thing. And then for certain book groups that come together, like some of the universities for our first book did a lot of book groups, I'm happy to get on, and participate once people have gotten through 80-90% of the book and answer questions and things like that to help further that knowledge. And people have found that to be very beneficial.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's quite a list of things that people can do to kind of stay plugged in. So that's really great that you two are both really hitting the scene on it. And it feels like it's more than just kind of a book and then you're just moving on. It really, you can feel the intention that you both have with engaging with this material and making sure people understand. And that's really wonderful.
Great. Good.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mordy, for coming on. I really appreciate your time. This has been illuminating for me, and hopefully we can chat again sometime.
Look forward to staying in touch. Brett, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah. Have a good one.
Take care.
All right. That was the episode. Thank you so much for listening all the way through until the end. Once again, that was Mordy Levine from the Jigme Lingpa Center in California. If you want to stay connected with Mordy and his work, you're always welcome to pick up one of his guidebooks from the internet. The links for that will be in whatever description you are listening or watching this in. Outside of that, you can also go to BuddhistSanDiego.com to see all of their online offerings as well, of which I think would be really good for this interesting transitionary period we are all finding ourselves in. Beyond that, if you want to support maybe this show, you can head on over to patreon.com/21st Century Vitalism and consider becoming a patron. I would be greatly appreciative and would love you forever. You can also follow us on Instagram, like us on Facebook, and subscribe over on YouTube, which is maybe the most direct way outside of the Patreon. So that is it for this week, y'all. Thank you so much for listening. We'll catch you next time.